Ladies and gentlemen and children of the planet Earth, this is the beginning of part 4 where I describe the various pictographs depicting the different forms of God that have been placed upon the reverse and obverse of the $1 bill. In this segment we are going to discuss the handles of the chariot of the Lord God, but this is one depiction of an encephalopod that was placed upon the $1 bill by folding the bill properly, because this is the first complex life form that has existed on the planet Earth. And this is an impossibility genetically, scientifically, and on a molecular basis completely impossible that this particular type of encephalopod, which I believe to be a vampire squid, came upon this planet 33 million years ago, when life in the ocean was comprised of single-celled creatures in a period of a few 100,000 years. Supposedly, we went from single-celled creatures inside the ocean to the most complex life form on Earth, aka the encephalopods, that had a ganglia of nerves and eyes this big, attaching the ganglia of nerves to its central brain and nervous system. So we went from a single cell amoeba to the most complex entity on Earth. And these denizens of the deep, and you can see them in my book and soon to be published on the internet as single pictures. These denizens of the deep are a representation of a massive amount of information being genetically input into a being or a creature that scientifically is impossible. It's like the missing link between the chimpanzees and the human beings. It doesn't exist. It was an experiment by some entity, some remnant race of peoples that are on this planet for 50,000 years that is provable, and perhaps billions of years visiting this world. And I believe the United States Mafia knows about these beings and or creatures and the various different types that come from all different places. I know it's crazy, but everything I do is crazy. I know they exist because I know they exist. It's a different segment, but I know they exist. It doesn't matter whether or not you believe it. They're here. They exist. Steven Spielberg talks about them. The X-Files talks about them. Stargate SG-1 talks about them. Stargate Atlantis talks about them, because they're real. They're real. They're just as real as this video, except that I have no education. I'm a non-intellectual human being with no right to say any of the things. I'm a carpenter. I'm a crane operator. I'm a captain. I'm a small single engine. I can fly. Okay, I operate heavy equipment. I'm nothing. I'm a laborer. I'm nothing. And I'm nothing, they take my word as being nothing. But I'm the person that is bringing you information that's going to transform the way reality is perceived. And ladies and gentlemen, at that point I'm going to move back from here, and we're going to move back into this particular pictograph that I created by folding the $1 bill in a certain way. And I'm going to go over some of the different ways of looking at this pictograph. This is the eye of the Lord God, as discussed in segment number 3, which comes from a portal from heaven This is the top of the base of the Great Pyramid, which is 44 feet by 44 feet, which represents the 44th POTUS, because this pictograph depicts something that is explained in great detail inside my book. This is a pictograph of the vampire squid that I just showed you that is being held by the clip. This is a picture of the squid moving through the water. This is water in this case. The webbing that appears around the spheres, the compass or the circles on the $1 bill is a webbing that is actually like an ether, which could be a representation of the universe and space. It could be a representation of oxygen, nitrogen that appears on the planet. And in this case, it is a representation of the water that which these denizens of the deep, a.k.a. the vampire squids, the first cephalopods that came unto this world 33 million years ago from one-celled creatures, and all of a sudden the most complex life form on Earth appears in a few 100,000 years, along with the Nautilus that also is depicted on this pictograph. Because if you look at a Nautilus from a vertical view, if this is the Nautilus right here, and you are looking at the shell of a Nautilus from a vertical view, what you are looking at is the 2 points that appear on the back of a Nautilus, and these are the ganglia that push or propel the Nautilus through the oceans that were also created 33 million years ago. This is a picture of the back of the shell of the Nautilus, these 13 beads that appear here and appear here. There are 13 beads here and 13 beads here. This is a picture of the Nautilus. Why are there 13 beads? Well, I'll tell you. The 13, the number 13, is supposed to represent a satanic point of view, or the occult. But the Lord God made the number 13 appear on both good and evil. Originally there were 13 months. The number 13 represents God and the two possibilities of God itself, good and evil, and the light and darkness of the universe. Now, if this is the top of a Nautilus shell, on a Nautilus there are 2 feet. There are 2 feet on a Nautilus. Go to the internet and look at the pictures of a Nautilus, and you will see a foot-like projection that comes out of these 2 different halves of a Nautilus, 2 feet. On each Nautilus it has a foot. This is the foot. This is another representation of a foot that's utilized for a different part of the pictogram. But if you look at this as the top of a Nautilus propelling itself through the water by creating a jet stream of water, this is a picture of the top of the shell of the Nautilus. Now, if you take this one step further, and we're going to rotate this once again, you have what appears to be a face. The face is a representation of another creature, the vampire squid, that appears in the ocean at the same time the Nautilus appears. This is a representation of a vampire squid squirting water to propel itself in a downward motion. If we turn it or rotate the bill one more time, what we can see now is the evil seed of death half exposed as the top, where you can see a representation of evil that exists on this planet, a.k.a. the commander-in-chief. And ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of segment number 4 of my new channel called $1 and I need to get a bigger camera, ladies and gentlemen, because this information needs to be expressed.